Hello everyone, welcome back to the workshop. It's been a little bit. I have made a lot of progress and done quite a bit of work, of course, and I want to show all that off to you and do a little bit of machining in this video. First thing, I've started to modify some of my tooling to go into the turret lathe. This is a jig for holding what I call fish plates, but they're actually called pulleyers. This is usually used in the milling machine, but I'm going to use it in the turret lathe. I bored this out for a stub. I have a stub shaft in the back, and this will go into the turret of the turret lathe. And then I'll hold a drill and the spindle. It'll be awkward, but a really good use of that big machine with the rigidity it has. Because I bore out 2-inch holes in these plates, and that lathe has all the horsepower and rigidity for drilling those out in a very efficient manner, so that's what I'll use. So I'm starting to modify some of the tooling for the new lathe. And this is some of the tooling I got with it. The small generator that I tried to build did not work out. As you can see, I don't have the actual motor on it anymore. Essentially, I tried building an induction generator, and I didn't realize I could get the voltage out of it, but I didn't realize getting amperage out of it was going to be really complicated. I would have had to build what's called a power factor correction capacitor bank, and it would have been very big, expensive, and I don't know if it would have worked. So I'm trying to sell this little International motor. I've got this panel. I still have the frame down here. The frame is going to get used for a trailer. This panel, I'm going to either keep it, I might give it to Adam, I don't know. Adam over at Small Time Machine Shop. Some of this angle iron will come off of here. This will all just get repurposed, basically. Yeah, I started cutting that stuff up. That 15 horsepower motor is going to go into the turret lathe. This here is the 15 horsepower motor. And that's going to be, we're going to do some machining on this project here. So these two sections of steel are going to go, those two sections of a box tube that I had over there are going to go onto this steel plate and go up. So I want the 15 horsepower motor up above, and I want it on the other side of the machine. So this motor's on the back side. I want the new motor on the other side. That'll make this machine quite a bit narrower. So it'll narrow this machine up by at least a good foot, probably a bit more. And this motor is going to be going to Adam over at Small Time Machine Shop. It'll come off. Now the problem with that is, unless I want that motor to be ridiculously high up there, and I really don't, these belts are going to be too small, and I don't have a motor adjuster for the motor. I could use that one, but it's way too big. So what I'm going to do is have a third pulley. So you can see it a bit better here. I have this drive pulley on the lathe. I'll have another pulley for the motor, and I want a third pulley out here to tension it. That way I have an easier way to tension the belts than using the motor, because the motor is going to be hanging up there in a really awkward spot, and trying to tension everything, it's just going to end up being really awkward. So drive, motor, tensioner up here. That's how it's going to go. We need to take a chunk of material and machine out the idler. Now before we machine out the idler, I do want to show off this guy here. This here is a Detroit 271 two-stroke diesel engine, or diesel generator, with a 30 kilowatt three-phase generator head. I'm incredibly blessed. A relative of mine knows I've been looking for a generator and knows I've been struggling to get one, and he found one for me and said, hey, I'll buy this for you, you can pay me back whenever if you put together the deal. And he went and got it, brought it to his house. I had to take a 4-hour road trip to go get it, and here it is. It works incredibly well. I did have to do a little bit of work to it, but it's a really nice generator, really easy on fuel. I made this roof over it. I made all this structure up here. I did have to put a different radiator on it, which is completely fine. The original radiator had a giant hole in it. I tried to repair it. It didn't really work. So I'm incredibly blessed with this generator. It is ridiculously nice. It powers up the turret lathe without any problems. The big clunky 10 horsepower motor on it doesn't It doesn't have a single issue, and it's a 30 kilowatt. And the 271s in this application, they're pretty damn good little motors. This engine shares the same pistons, liners, injectors, I believe rocker arms, valve springs, valves, fuel pump, a whole bunch of internal smaller parts. The starter is the same as the 8V71 in the Astro. So parts are easy to get. They're relatively cheap, easy to get, and they're very plentiful. You can get pretty much everything for it. There's nothing that's unobtainable for it. And so it's the perfect generator and motor for my shop, and I'm damn happy to have it. I need to clean up some of the wiring, but it's got a nice German engine generator controller on it. So as far as the machining project I have for us today, I need to do a little bit of heavy machining on this big old chunk of steel, because I need an idler for that turret lathe. I need an idler pulley or a tensioning pulley, so that I can tension the belts and do all of that fun stuff. So what we're going to do is take this is I believe 4-inch or 4.5-inch solid steel. We're going to clean up one end for the pulley. It's just going to be a flat pulley. It's not going to have the grooves in it. And the other side is going to get turned down to 1.5 inches, so that I can use my 1.5-inch bearings with it. Either I'll use these guys, I might use these. These are awful big. These would also work. So either one, really. Apparently that heavy a feed was a bit much for the clutch, and I don't blame it, because these are some chunky chips coming off of her. Those are the small ones. Here are the big ones. Pretty good chips coming off of that at a really good pace. Ooh, hot. I'll back my probably my speed down a little bit and keep trucking as is. Now that all of the really heavy material removal is done, I cleaned up this guy and turned this down to 2-inch diameter. I'm going to part it over here, get this chunk of steel out of here, flip it around. I'll grip here where I just cleaned up, finish out this shaft, and then I'll turn it around and I'll face this guy and we'll be done. here she is, still hot, so I'm going to let it cool down, and I'll probably have to do a bit of sanding. It doesn't show up on the video very well, but yeah, there we go. I got some really bad chatter here at the end. I could have put a center in the end of it, but I'm lazy. And it's a pretty simple, pretty ugly little part that's not going to be seen very much. So I'm not too worried about that as long as the pillow block bearing will slide on. I did leave this area thicker, just smart to do that. There's no reason to turn this down. It's going to have to stick out a little bit anyways, so not turning that down means it's a bit stronger. I did some hand contoured radiuses here in the corners. That just helps. If you have a really sharp corner in there, it's a stress riser. Whereas if you have a nice radius in there, nicer than mine at least, that stress doesn't get concentrated. It kind of smoothly flows up to the larger diameter, if that makes any sense. All I have to do now is wait for it to cool down. I'll do some polishing on it. It's a thou over here, and it's, I think, 2 thou over in the knurled area. So that shouldn't be too hard. This might take a second for me to knock it down a little bit. But with how hot it is, that could very well be the heat. And since the shop's been open, this bearing is also pretty damn cold. So I'll let this cool down and I'll bring it back whenever I turn her around and get the other side done. Well, it's starting to get late and my dinner here's fast cooling. So while I was cooking, I just had my clone over here facing off the end of this idler shaft. And this is the finished part. 2 pillow block bearings, idler. This is a bit heavy for what it's doing. It just needs to tension the belts. It'll pull, so I'll have my motor up here, theoretically, the other drive pulley down here, and it's going to pull. I could have put the grooves in there, made it a V-belt pulley, but it's not driving anything, so I don't think it'll be a problem. Let me know if you think it will be. If enough of you advise me against my current plan, then I'll change it and I'll go a different route. But I think this should work out just fine. I can make a little adjuster for those pillow block bearings and it'll work out really, really well. It's going to work just fine, I think. Well, with that little project out of the way, I can eat my dinner here and then get back at it, getting some other things done. Now, that footage is probably the last machining footage that's ever going to be shot in this shop. The next footage, which might be a month or a month and a half from now, is going to be in the new shop. And I'm incredibly excited for that. The only thing I need to do now before I move out to the property, out to my, my new piece of ground, I need to, of course, finish up the modification of the turret lathe. Moving that motor isn't just a convenience to get a little bit more room. That turret lathe would almost not fit in the new shop without moving that motor around. And of course, putting that 15 horsepower 3-phase motor on it instead of the 10 horsepower that it has now is going to be really nice for the production work I do, because I'll have a lot more horsepower to play with and I'll be able to get parts done quicker. I need to finish up the work on the turret lathe. I need to finish up some work on the Astro as well. The ramps on the back are still not done. The weather has really slowed me down on that. It's a lot of welding and a lot of repetitive work. For those of you that don't know, the Astro is a cab over truck that I had that you saw earlier in the video, and I did a couple modifications to it. Before it was just a normal flatbed, but I put on a set of 6 or 7 foot tall ramps for bringing machines on it. And then I realized I really need another 4-foot extension to bring my angles down. Of course, the longer your ramp is at the back of your truck, the shallower your angles are. And then if you have a really short ramp, the angles get really steep. So I did the math and figured I need another 4-foot extension on mine. I have most of the framework done. I need to do quite a bit of legwork as far as cutting up steel to fill in the gaps on either side. And I've got grading for the center section, as you might have seen out there. I need to do some work finishing up the ramps on the Astro so that I can drag machines up and drag machines off. Is really the gist of it. The Astro now has a 10,000 pound Garwood hydraulic winch. I believe I showcased that on the channel quite a while ago. That winch is now installed. It has a hydraulic motor on it. Everything is plumbed up. It's got 300 feet worth of cable on it. It is only 3/8 cable, which is kind of sad. 3/8 cable, as I understand it, has about a 16,000 pound braking limit, and so it should work out quite well with the 10,000 pound Garwood winch, but I don't know the exact specification of that winch. I believe it's a 10,000 pound Garwood winch, and of course, because I have a hydraulic motor on it, which is also kind of an unknown, I don't know how much force I'm really getting out of it. In all reality, I want closer to a 1/2 inch or maybe even 5/8 cable on that winch, but 3/8 is what I had, 3/8 what's on there. I'll just have to be really careful bringing machines on and off. And the last thing I really need to do before I move out to the property is finish up some of the work on the generator. Now the generator, whenever I first got it, the radiator was shot, the mechanical fan on it had a big chunk out of it, the starter had issues, the controller had issues, all of these things. It sold for fairly cheap for a 30 kilowatt diesel generator for good reason. But I was able to fix the controller, I fixed the starter. I did plug the holes in the radiator. It had one massive hole in it. So I was able to fill those holes in with solder, and I did take the mechanical fan off, and I used an electric fan that I have instead. But sadly, the pulley on the water pump, it was only held on with 2 bolts. It came off one day while I was running the generator and put a bunch more holes into the radiator. So it's got a new radiator on it. I need to finish up mounting the pulley again. So I need to finish that up, and that should be about it for what I need to do before I move out to the property. That generator it's such a key piece, and it is such a perfect generator for out at the property. It is so incredibly simple. The injectors, if I had to get basically a brand new fuel system for that generator, it's going to be maybe $500. The injectors are around $200 a piece, and the fuel pump is about $100. It's an incredibly simple, incredibly cheap to maintain generator, and it's a fantastic little unit. Rebuild kits are cheap. The blower, you can get used blowers or you can rebuild that one. So I'm incredibly happy and I'm incredibly blessed to have gotten that generator. With all that being said, hopefully the next video is me moving out to the property. With all that being said, I hope you all had a fantastic Christmas and a Happy New Year's, and have a fantastic day. Also, please like and subscribe if you want to watch more.